Technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Dan Ancheta here again with another episode of By the Bay. Thank you so much for joining us. As a reminder, we're on all the different podcast applications and YouTube, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at By the Bay. And we are part of the Lend an Ear Media family. So thanks for joining us today. And our guest today is Yousef Khoury, who is an amazing realtor at Coldwell Banker in Petaluma, someone who I've been around for a bunch of years, and a really great professional who's carving out his own space in the local kind of North Bay real estate scene. So thanks for being on the show, man. I know it's your first podcast. You're in good hands. I'm going to take good care of you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
So I love just to kind of jump right into, giving us the update about what you're seeing in the market right now, what your buyers and sellers are experiencing, and kind of put the finger on the pulse of what's happening in the market.
Yeah. So regarding sellers in today's market, I think it's just a matter of coming to terms with today's market. It's important that, especially when pricing your home, you're looking no more than three months back. You can't do the 6 months anymore. So that's super important. I think that pricing your home well, if you're in a good neighborhood, it's going to sell.
Right. So it sounds like a rapidly changing environment.
Definitely.
Meaning you can't look back too far because that data is not relevant.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. Keep going.
Yeah. So with buyers, there is a lot of underlying demand that I've been experiencing, not only with people who are getting pre-approved and sitting back and just kind of watching the market for whatever reason. Either they're not comfortable with the current payments, they're kind of watching to see if prices come down more, or if they're just scared about what's going on in today's world. But then there's still those buyers out there who are actively looking and taking advantage of the current market.
Yeah, some opportunity there to have some negotiation space with the seller.
Exactly.
So I know a little bit about your business, and you're not specifically geographically tied to one city or something. You kind of go a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
Right. So is that the same every market that you're working in, or can you kind of describe what you're seeing in different markets?
Yeah. So when I first started, that's probably where you saw me, like going Sonoma County, Lake County. I wasn't being super picky then, but I mainly focused on Sonoma and Marin County. But yeah, I'm seeing kind of the same activity from buyers and sellers in both Sonoma and Marin County.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into that a little bit. So let's go back in time where you're kind of getting into the business and you're kind of taking the business from wherever. What was the big shift for you to kind of be more selective and go focusing on, smaller geographic area?
Yeah, I think that I was spreading myself too thin by going too far. I really wanted to focus on client experience once I started getting the ball rolling. So I think that's kind of where I started shifting, focusing my activities in Sonoma and Marin County. And I'm from Sonoma County, so I'm very familiar.
Got it. Talk to me about that user experience. I think that that's something that's underappreciated in real estate, right? I think that a lot of times, you get a lead or a prospect and you put them on a search based off their number of bedrooms or bathrooms or whatever they're looking for. But talk to me about what you do differently in your user experience.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's important to actually get to know the client, get to know their needs and why they have those needs. So I think really diving deep and figuring that out and taking the time to just really figure out what they're looking for will change the game.
Right. I think that's, again, underappreciated and underutilized to actually ask the question, like, why are we buying a house?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Why are you selling this house and moving here? Like, what are the big life events that's driving you to make this decision? Where did that come from for you? Because it's not typical. If I'm being honest, I talked to a lot of realtors and not many of them get to that level of kind of complexity and intimacy when they're dealing with their clients.
In the beginning, I think I made the mistake of thinking more transactional. And I think just with experience, you learn that this is a really big deal for people. And I think that you learn to just be a little bit more compassionate and and really focus on why they're doing what they want to do. And it just makes all the difference. You can just tell in the way they communicate with you, the way they feel, everything about it.
Yeah, I think it's critical, having that emotional intelligence, some empathy for their experience, and understanding what drives them and why they're making this big life-altering decision to buy a house or sell a house or both at the same time or relocate or what they're doing.
Exactly.
And it's something that I think customer experience and satisfaction really benefits from.
Yep.
Right? So talk to me about what you're doing in this market right now. So like, there's a lot of fear that I'm hearing and seeing with people who are in the real estate industry and the mortgage industry, and also for buyers and sellers. What are you doing differently right now? Because you're kind of swimming upstream. I watch your activity. I see what you're doing, right? So you're doing a ton. So what are you doing that's different?
Yeah, I think I'm feeling it. I think just like everybody else, there's definitely a market shift. You can't just throw a home on the market and it sells with multiple offers, $100,000, $50,000 over asking. You don't have 10, 15 people coming through an open house, and you pick up a buyer and they want to make an offer on the house and just meet them the same day. So I'm kind of going back to where I started, and I've always done this, but focusing on people who are having a hard time selling their house, for example, expired listings, coming in with that. So, for example, just yesterday I made a phone call. You call 20 expired listings, but, set an appointment for today. So just going back to the roots, where I started, for sale by owners, and then also doing your follow-ups and keeping client relationships tight.
I think it's really, so what you said earlier, you kind of glazed right over it. I think the difference is that you picked up the phone and called these people, right? Like, so many people know that they need to be in touch with their clients and prospects and just put yourself out there. But there's a lot of call reluctancy of being told no or getting hung up on. Tell me about how did you overcome that?
Yeah. So, when I first started, I really had no choice. You definitely have to be talking to people about buying and selling real estate if you want to help people buy and sell real estate. And people weren't just going to be calling me looking to buy or sell. So that's really the only thing I knew to do. So I just stayed consistent with it. And it takes a lot of time, phone calls, and consistency. And but it pays off. And then once it pays off, the snowball effect kind of just happens.
Right. You get that momentum.
Exactly.
I think that momentum is underappreciated in people's lives, and especially when you're in real estate and you're self-employed, right? There's no one who's going to hold you accountable to make sure you did a certain number of calls. It has to come from you. You have to be driven to do that.
Exactly.
Has it always been something that you've experienced? Have you always been like a go-getter, driven, like fully dedicated type of person?
Yeah, I'm pretty competitive. I grew up, as soon as I could start playing sports, I started playing sports, and I think that kind of built that in me. But yeah, I'm a very competitive person. So.
Right. And you don't shy away from hard stuff. You do a lot of, on social and stuff, I see you're running these crazy distance runs and doing all sorts of stuff. So that's part of your DNA. It's part of who you are. So talk to me about that kind of, how do you get in that mind space to do those kind of endurance things? Definitely.
Yeah. The reason why I do those types of things is because I like to push myself. I think pushing yourselves out of your boundaries just helps you grow as a person, not only physically, but mentally. And it helps you push yourself in other ways as well in life. For example, making the phone calls.
Right. I think it's all ties together, right? It becomes a personality thing that you have developed over time. Maybe you started off with some of it naturally, just kind of who you are and the environment you grew up in. But you can see over time that if you're challenging yourself and making yourself uncomfortable and dealing with that discomfort.
Yeah.
Right. The being told no, the physical discomfort of challenging yourself physically, and keeping to a strict schedule and a regimen to do these things, that it becomes easier over time.
Yeah. And then you start enjoying the process more too. Like when you first start making calls, it's scary. And it takes a long time to get used to it, at least for me. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and then you start enjoying it because you start seeing the results. Same thing with running, same thing with lifting weights. You could kind of put that to anything that you do.
Totally. Do you have like a specific routine, like a morning routine or a thing that you do? I'm always curious about that. Can you tell me about what you do?
I try to stick to a morning routine.
You have little kids though. It's hard
exactly.
to do.
Yeah. So I try to wake up. It's anywhere between like 5 and 7 a.m. Most days. If I wake up early enough, I'll get my reading in 10 pages of some sort of self-development book. Right now I'm reading Brian Buffini. I can't remember the title, but it's a good book. Hopefully I remember it soon.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes when you figure it out later today.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
So I start my day off with some reading and my cup of coffee, kind of clear my brain and think about what's going to be happening during the day. And then either I'll get my workout in before I take my daughter to school or after, depending on what time I wake up. And I do try to take a little bit of time to take some time for appreciation. And I do a little prayer in the morning and just take some time for appreciation. And then I pretty much get my day started.
I think it's really critical that people do some type of routine to get themselves physically, emotionally, and mentally prepared for a day. And especially as we're going into this shifted, difficult market, right? Where it's just harder.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
And if you don't have yourself prepared for it, then you can't go and address your day strategically.
Definitely.
And I know that it's easier in a way to just kind of do whatever comes next in the day, right? But I think that my hypothesis is that people who have that, at least that morning routine, maybe up until like lunchtime, and they kind of know what they're doing between waking up and having lunch, they find success more rapidly and more consistently than those who don't have that specific plan.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's going to be a really interesting next year and a half in our industry, and especially locally. And those who are going to be disciplined like yourself, who are going to challenge themselves to be uncomfortable, who don't pretend like they know everything, and they're just going to learn and keep going, they're going to have an incredible amount of success moving forward. Is that what you're seeing? Because you talk to lots of other agents, right? And you have a team, and you're doing, building your own business and doing your thing. So, what is your experience there?
Yeah. So regarding the team, when I first started building the team, I think it was probably about a year and a half or so ago out. We were in the middle of a super hot market, so it seemed like the right thing to do, but what comes with building a team is extreme leadership. That's one thing I think I stepped in too early on. I definitely, we're still working on it, and I still have team members, but I'm working more on myself now to build that leadership so that we can move forward, and actually grow as a team. But we're not really adding team members or anything like that. We're just keeping it where we have it and working.
I think that's really insightful to be able to go recognize, like, hey, maybe I wasn't ready for this yet, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And now I kind of know the things I need to work on and develop in myself and my business and other things so that I can be successful in that in the future.
Exactly.
Right? You have to learn, right? So you talked about extreme ownership, extreme leadership and ownership, right? So I'm sure I've read Jocko's book.
Not yet.
Okay.
I want to.
Okay, cool. I'll get you a copy. I think it's a super, so Jocko Willink is a retired Navy SEAL, and he, headed up all sorts of things in overseas anyway. He talks about like really owning your position as a leader. And I think what you just described is to be able to go, I wasn't ready for this yet, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. But I know the steps now that I need to go. I know what I need to learn. I know what I need to develop over time. And I still have the long-term objective in mind. It just isn't going to happen in the timeline that maybe I thought it was going to.
Yeah. I mean, especially now with the changing market, it's more important to, like I said, focus on building yourself, but also your clients, especially in today's changing market. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's a hard position to be in as a leader in that world, because every minute that you spend developing your team is a minute that you're not spending developing your personal book of business and your own relationships. And there's just so many hours in the day. And so there's this balance that has to be found between those things. And right now in a changing market where it's getting harder, it's a harder choice to make.
Yeah.
Right. When deals were kind of plentiful and it wasn't super difficult to find clients and things were just happening more rapidly, you had maybe more capacity for team. And now it's really like, hey, I'm looking at my pipeline and what's coming down, what listings I have coming up and what buyers I have going. And that's where my attention needs to be.
Yep.
Right. So talk to me about that process for you and what you're doing right now to be successful, down the road. We talked about your sellers and who you're kind of calling and doing that thing. Are you doing anything differently with your buyers now?
So, one thing that, and I actually kind of learned it from you, was, taking the time to, actually sit down and try to get them to do a buyer consultation with you. I think,
how's that working out? We talked about that a little while ago.
I think people are starting to appreciate that. Like I just started doing it. So, but, I'm seeing a change there. So that's one thing I'm going to start implementing. I'm curious and excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah. So just for the listener, so we had a planning session a few weeks ago, and I was asking the question of how are we actually onboarding our buyers, right? Yeah. When you're doing a listing, you have a listing presentation and you have the data and you're going to their house and you're hopefully asking great questions. And I think there's some improvements in general the industry can make there, which is a different podcast. But I asked the group that was there, what are you doing to onboard your buyers? What are you doing to actually, like, if you're just asking about how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what's your price range, are you pre-approved, and what school district you want to be in, that's what most people do.
Yeah.
And so how are you doing that differently after we had that conversation? Can you walk us through like some questions you're asking that maybe you're finding good results with?
Yeah. One thing is, what is motivating you to purchase a home? They'll tell you, I just had a baby. We're renting. We want to plan our routes, and we just kind of want to learn the process. So
going a little bit deeper,
exactly.
And understanding more than just budget and bedrooms.
Exactly. And it's not about if you want to purchase right now. Doing a buyer consultation for somebody who's just thinking about it, and maybe they're going to be ready in a year or two, or if they just want a game plan, I think that will make all the difference, because a lot of buyers, especially first-time buyers, they don't know the process at all. They don't know where to start. I think meeting face-to-face will kind of build that trust, but also just get them streamlining to home ownership if that's their goal.
Yeah, I think that's totally spot on. And I think that I know from my experience that when we do a really good job at the buyer education, a lot of times the horizon of buying time frame reduces.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people still think no matter how many times people post it and make TikToks about it and do whatever else, you don't have to put down 20%. You don't have to have perfect credit. There's lots of options. There's all sorts of ways that you can get into a home if you really are driven to make that happen. And consulting with someone like you and me and talking those things through, we just closed the deal yesterday for borrowers who thought their timeline was like years out. And we did it in like 3 months because they didn't understand all the options. And it turns out that they were a lot closer to home ownership. They thought they had to pay off all their student loans and all this other stuff. And we talked about overall affordability and the difference between what they're renting and what their mortgage payment's going to be. And they're like, oh, we could do that now. I'm like, you sure can.
Yeah.
So what are some of those obstacles that you think are in the way of those first-time home buyers, right? When you're doing that consultation, what do you hear from them regularly, like why they can't do it?
They just don't know what they don't know. They think that they can't do it. They think they won't qualify for some reason. They don't know about all the options out there.
Is it credit? Is it down payment? Like, what do you think the main like reasons that people have in their heads why they can't do it now?
I think it just seems like a lot. I think it's just they really don't know. Right? They haven't gone through the process. Like, for example, I helped somebody purchase a home who I was talking to just because, he's actually my brother-in-law technically. And we were talking about it for a while. And he's like, I really want to, but just kept putting it off. So one day I was at his house. I helped him fill out the online application on his phone. And then just got that ball rolling. And all of a sudden he was just submitting the necessary documents and doing taking the necessary steps. Next thing you know, he's in a home. He's been in for the last 2 years. He was in his early 20s, and he's living in a home with his family, and huge amount of appreciation since then. Right. So I mean, it's really that simple.
And imagine how his life has been benefited from that one decision.
Exactly.
And like, what would be different in his life if he didn't make that one critical decision to listen to you and move forward and do it? All the equity that he's built, like not there.
Yep.
Renting. I mean, like just a completely different trajectory that you set him up for the future. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? Is to help people make good financial decisions that benefit them in the long term and give them a place to be.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm always fascinated by what are the things that people think prevent them from doing it.
Yeah. I really think it's just that they don't know. They don't know.
Right.
They think that they can't do it for some reason.
Yeah.
For whatever reason that is, because if you don't talk to a professional who can actually kind of lay it out for you, you don't even know what to work on.
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. And
it's overwhelming.
Exactly.
So how do we as real estate professionals take something that is regarded as being really, really difficult and overwhelming and make it super simple so everyone knows that there's a process to follow?
Yeah.
Right. And there's probably an option out there for you. If you really are motivated, you really want to make it happen, there's probably something that we can do.
Definitely.
Like even today.
Yeah. I would highly recommend if it's in your goals to purchase a home in the next 2 to 5 years, to reach out to somebody who can help you walk through the process. Because if that is your goal, just by meeting with somebody for 20, 30 minutes, you can streamline yourself to homeownership extremely quickly compared to if you're just kind of going at it blindly, because you don't know what to prepare for.
Right. I love that. I think that I wish more clients would consult earlier in the process. Like you said, like, hey, I don't think we can do this. We don't want to do this for 2 years, but what should I be doing between now and then?
Yeah.
And I think that would be, if I could do one, like change consumer behavior in one way, I think that might be the thing, is to consult earlier and not do everything at the last minute.
Yeah.
Right. Giving themselves some time to process things and to kind of optimize their financial situation to get them the best possible financing, and little tiny tweaks that you can make along the way can improve your credit and make a huge difference in the rate that you get and all kind of stuff. So
exactly.
Cool. Well, what do you think happens? What do you think happens next in the market? I mean, if you have the crystal ball, we're sitting here a year from now. What do you think 2023 brings us?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because I'm seeing a lot of different information going out, depending on where you look and who you listen to. I think the interesting thing about today's market is the way that interest rates are affected by, I think, what the feds are putting out, even though it's supposed to be not in direct correlation with that. But the feds said themselves that without saying it, that they are trying to slow down the housing market. They want unemployment to go up. So I think forced deceleration in the market is a sign that we're in a good spot regarding real estate and values there, to where they will bounce back as soon as we see good changes in the market in regards to like what the feds are seeing inflation wise. So I think that going into 2023, depending on what interest rates do, in Sonoma County specifically, we'll probably see a slight deceleration or continued deceleration in the market. I don't think we're going to see anything dramatic. The other thing to keep in mind too is, even if we do drop, let's say 8% in value, that's bringing us back to 2020 numbers. Because right now, if the average sales price of a home in Sonoma County is $765,000, 8% decrease in values. I mean, we're at 2020, and 2020 was an awesome market in everybody's eyes. And at that point, everyone was like, I'm going to wait for prices to come down. They waited, and we're here where we are today.
Right.
But so it's really hard to say. I think that we'll see a slight deceleration in the market. I think that we'll see interest rates come down at some point. And at that point, I think that we're going to see some more buyers step back into the market. I don't think that it's going to be as crazy as we've been seeing in the last year, 2, 3 years at all.
Yeah.
a more neutral market. And I think it's what we've all been asking for the last couple of years.
Absolutely. And a more neutral market where people actually have to have a discussion and some type of negotiation, and there's contingency periods and people can take a beat and think about it, I think is healthier overall. And I think that it's where we're heading. What you said about, the Fed policy and interest rates and everything else, I think is really critical. And I want to make a point that the Fed has signaled that they're not really interested in making changes to their Fed funds rate increase plan. They've kind of scheduled out these increases. I don't think they're going to vary from that until we see unemployment go up, because despite the increased interest rates, despite the inflation that we're seeing and all the other stuff, unemployment is still incredibly low. Wage growth is still accelerating. Not as fast as inflation, but wage growth is still accelerating overall. And until we see the jobs market cool, I don't think that we're seeing a change in the overall Fed plan. So if I'm looking at an indicator of like what's going to change overall interest rates, I'm looking at unemployment numbers over a consistent, month. It can't just be one jobs report, because that's not enough. It has to be a few jobs reports that come out that show that unemployment's going up. Because right now we're at full employment, right? And jobs buy houses, jobs, that generate income for the household, add to consumption, and we need to slow all that down to get our arms around the inflation that we have. I'd rather have them pace that out in a way that is going to actually stop the inflation, actually reverse the course of inflation, than take their foot off the gas and have us go through a double dip in our inflation. Meaning, hey, we got our arms around inflation. Let's cool off on the Fed funds increases, or let's actually lower, the rates or whatever. And then inflation is not all the way killed out of our system, and then we see another acceleration, and it's even worse. Let's really do a good job here on extinguishing this entire fire, right?
Yeah.
Let's make sure it's all the way out before we start doing other things. Because if you just leave it burning just a little bit, it can grow again to be a massive problem. And I think that will be something that would shock the system and really cause problems for the economy and the middle class, So I'm really hopeful that the Fed is going to be diligent when it comes to this. But unfortunately, the track record is really poor. Mm-hmm. So I think, if I'm a little nervous about that, if I'm being honest. And I think that since you brought up the Fed policy, that's one thing that I'm looking at is what's the unemployment going to do?
Yeah.
Right. So, and that right now is on a really healthy track. I mean, people are working, and despite the number of layoffs and things that we're seeing, people are finding jobs almost immediately. There's still a huge demand for labor.
Yeah.
So, especially in an environment like we are, like in Sonoma County, there's super low unemployment, and I think that is something that we have to keep our eye on. So, are there any other indicators that you're looking at when you're kind of projecting out to what your business looks like and giving advice to your clients? Like, what are the things that you watch and look at to help guide that advice?
Yeah, I'm just kind of feeling the way the market is treating me. So, and also looking at the numbers, but there's still a lot of demand out there in regards to buyers, in my opinion, and what I've been experiencing. It's just a matter of them kind of sitting on the sidelines. So there's pent up demand at the same time as actual demand slowing. So is the inventory. So that's kind of going hand in hand. Yeah, I think that it's kind of staying together, demand and supply. And it's although the demand is slowing and prices are coming down, supply isn't exceeding demand dramatically.
Right. Like the average days on market has gone up some, but not a ton.
No.
Right.
Since 2021, I believe, compared to 2022, I think the average days on market was 36 days in Sonoma County. And now we're looking more like, I think, 41 to 45.
Right. So that's more, but it's not
dramatic.
Essentially, it's the difference between listing comes up on Wednesday, you have an open house over the weekend, you accept an offer Monday morning, right? That was kind of the pattern that we saw for a long time.
Yeah.
And now it's like, we might actually see the house on the market for 2 weekends before an offer is accepted.
Yeah, and that's normal.
That's normal, but that's not where we've been.
Exactly.
It's been like clockwork. Listing comes up on Tuesday or Wednesday, so it could be on the tour, for the realtors to go take their tour kind of before the weekend, and then it's open Saturday and Sunday, and offers are due, Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
Right. Like and I think that was great for a number of years. There's deals happening. It's happening quickly, but it could be on the market for 2 weekends, and I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you live here, you grew up here, your family's here. Tell us a little bit more about like kind of your roots in the community.
Definitely. I grew up in Roanoke Park. So, here all my life. Went to Rancho Cotati. That's where I met she should be my wife by now, but my girlfriend.
I wasn't going to ask you.
Yeah. We're still together. We have 2 kids. I have a 2-year-old son. His name's Issa, and 3-year-old son. And my daughter, she just turned 8. And yeah.
You're here doing the Sonoma County thing. You live here, you work here, you're involved in the community, and you're in Roanoke Park again, right?
I live in Roanoke Park. Yeah. Yep.
That's
exactly.
Great. It's a cool community that's growing up there around the university. The construction that's happening up there is really encouraging that there's some new inventory coming on.
Definitely.
Cool. So why do you guys choose to stay here? I mean, you can kind of be anywhere, right? So what is it about Sonoma County that is keeping you here?
I mean, you kind of have it all here. You have awesome culture. It varies slightly throughout, each city, but you can make it to Bodega Bay super easily. You can go to Tahoe for the day if you really wanted to, if you're that kind of person. Sacramento, you have beautiful weather. There's just so much to love about it.
Yeah, totally. And you're a big food person, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So we were texting some time ago, but we both were working on our Traeger game, right? On our smoker game. So it's always fun to see what you're doing on that, because I'm always like, oh man, I got to try that. I'm not super adventurous when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And then I'll watch your Instagram stories. I'll be like, oh man, I gotta step up my game a bit. So kind of wrapping up. So what do you think like financial advice that everyone should know, not necessarily related to real estate, but just kind of in general, what should people do to be healthy financially?
I think it's kind of what everybody says. Try to keep the spending down as much as possible. Really look at what you're making on a monthly basis, a weekly basis, whatever that is, and just structure, where your money goes based on that, and stay disciplined. Put a portion of the money that you have aside for whatever investments you want, whether that be real estate or not. But yeah, I think specifically to real estate, I think if people start thinking about it more long term rather than trying to time the market, they're gonna see awesome results. They'll thank themselves in the future. I haven't ran into a lot of people who say, I wish I never bought that house, but I've ran into a lot of people who said, I wish I never sold that house.
I think I really like that.
Yeah.
That's cool right there. Very few people regret buying a house. More people regret selling the house.
Yeah, at least with my experience. Yeah.
I have the same. If I think about that for a moment, I have the same feedback on that. I think most people would say, I should have held on longer. Oh, if I would have known that the market was going to do what it was going to do, even when it went down some, I should have kept it and held on to it and been well better off. And a lot of the people that I know that have generated like generational wealth, right? Like very wealthy people, they bought and they held and they learned how to be landlords, and they had rental properties, and they had other people, kind of paying the mortgages and building the equity in those homes. I think that's a really good lesson, is to buy and hold if you can. Obviously, not everyone can, but if you can, buy and hold and let time work its magic.
Definitely.
That's great advice. I really appreciate that. Dude, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's first time for you, and you did a great job, and I really appreciate your time, and thanks for all the insight. I think we learned a lot, and I just really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a great experience.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, man.
See you soon.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. Hear more shows about Northern California now